The by far most common question I get asked is, what do I shoot with? So in this video, I'm going to briefly walk you through what I use in terms of cameras, stabilizers, lenses, microphones, ND filters, lighting, and every other little gadget I bring with me to make my weddings as carefree and beautiful as possible. I will not walk you through every single piece of equipment I own because it would take forever. This video is dedicated solely to what I bring to each and every wedding. I also won't walk you through how to use every piece of equipment, just why I have it, why I use it, and why I love it. We'll talk about how to use it in later videos. And let me start off by saying that I have not used every single type of camera there is, and just because I use certain brands and models that may not be yours, does not mean I'm saying that mine are the best and the greatest. I use them because I love them and they meet my needs. I don't believe that your equipment is what makes you a good videographer. I've seen horrible videos shot on expensive cameras and beautiful wedding videos shot on crappy cameras. You are what make the film. I promise that if you're stressing about equipment and the latest and greatest of everything, you're missing the point. And on the other hand, if you're looking for the cheapest option, you're also missing the point. If your camera can make things look beautiful, I don't care what brand or model it is. Look for gear that meets your needs and can do what you want it to do. The brand, model, and price should not be the first thought. Now, don't crucify me just yet. I know what you're thinking. Obviously, equipment helps, and obviously nicer equipment will result in nicer looking footage. And yes, I know that I film on an expensive camera, but again, get gear that meets your needs, period. So, what camera do I use? My needs for a camera are pretty simple. It needs to film 60 frames per second in at least 1080p, have good colors, and great autofocus. My first DSLR that accomplished this was my 5D Mark IV, which I'm recording on right now. I upgraded to the Mark IV from my crappy little Canon EOS Rebel T2i and immediately saw a huge improvement in my films. I filmed on the Mark IV for about a year and a half and I loved it. I love this camera. The 5D Mark IV is completely touchscreen, so you can adjust every little setting right from the LCD screen, and its colors are perfect. It can shoot 1080 at 60 and is full frame. Beautiful camera. And by the way, all of the equipment I'm talking about is linked to my kit.com. So to get the exact links for what I'm talking about, check out kit.com/Jake Weisler, link below. Last year, I bought the 1DX Mark II, which is my main camera now. After a year and a half of the 5D Mark IV, I felt like I was ready to jump into the 4K game, which would allow me to raise my prices because I was raising my quality. The 1DX is one of the most pricey DSLRs at around $5,500, but this thing is a beast. It can shoot 4K at 60 or 120 at 1080. The 1DX also has incredible autofocusing capabilities because it was originally built as a sports photography camera, so its autofocus is super fast. Also, its colors right out of camera are fantastic. A couple of things I don't like about it is that it's not completely touchscreen like the Mark IV, and at 4K it has a 1.35 crop, so I had to buy new lenses to compensate. Parker goes in depth about crop sensor cameras inside of Full-Time Filmmaker if you're interested. I have two of these bad boys because one, I got them for crazy good prices, and two, my needs require to. I want to get a third one for my wedding ceremonies, so hopefully maybe later this year I'll buy a third one, unless they can make one better and newer. And then recently, Parker bought the Sony a7 III, which I've used a couple times and I'm actually very impressed with. However, after tasting 4K at 60, I can't go back to 1080p. And unfortunately, the Sony camera can only do 4K at 30 frames per second, which just doesn't meet my needs. But it's a fantastic camera and is so much more affordable at only $2,000. Lenses. A focal length is an artistic choice, and we have a whole video dedicated to using focal lengths, but let me just quickly walk you through the lenses I bring to every wedding and why, and examples of what each one looks like. My by far most used lens is my Canon 35mm 1.4, which I'm filming on right now. I love the 50mm look, but my 1DX is a crop of 1.35, so my 50mm turns into a 70mm. So I had to buy this 35mm, which turns it into almost a 50mm, which gives me the look I love. The 35mm is a sharp, beautiful lens, and I use it at just about every wedding. Some weddings I've actually shot entirely on the 35mm, and I was very pleased with the results. I recently just bought the Sigma 40mm, which apparently is sharper than the 35, but it's such a heavy lens that I don't use it a whole lot, but still a beautiful lens. Before I had the 1DX, on my 5D Mark IV, I would solely use the Canon 50mm 1.2. This lens is my favorite lens ever made. It's sharp, has the lowest aperture, and when it catches light, for some reason, it produces this orange orb sun flare, which is gorgeous. gorgeous. Moving on to the wide angles, my favorite wide angle lens is a Sigma 20mm 1.4. This lens is so freaking sharp. Such a sexy image. It's pretty heavy, but I love it. And my latest addition to my prime lens collection is my Canon 85mm 1.4 with image stabilization. This lens just came out and it's gorgeous. The image stabilization alone is worth the price. Again, it turns into like 110mm on my 1DX, but I love it. I prefer prime lenses over zoom lenses because 1, they're sharper, and 2, I love a low aperture because of how blurry the background can get. That's my creative preference. Which brings me to my next lens, my Canon 24-70mm 2.8 version 2. This was my first lens I bought with my 5D Mark IV, and honestly I don't use this lens very much anymore because I'm just so addicted to the prime look. It just kind of sits on my shelf nowadays. My 70-200mm 2.8 is a must for wedding videographers. Such a great lens for ceremonies. Zooms in super tight without getting in the way of anybody. For the Sony a7 III, I love the Tamron 24-70mm and also the Sigma 35. Stabilizers. My number one stabilizer that I use for just about everything is the GlideCam. I love the GlideCam. People can call it outdated, but it meets all my needs. I love smooth footage, but I also love versatility, and my GlideCam can give me that. It's reliable, you don't have to charge it, and it gives you the shots that you need without looking super robotic. Sure, like anything, it requires tons of practice, but the results are incredible. I use the GlideCam HD 4000 with the Devon Graham series GlideCam head. The HD Pro is also a fantastic option that just came out for a much cheaper price, and it's better for smaller cameras. I also just bought the Ronin S, which is a beautiful tool, and I use it more and more every day. The shots you can get with the Ronin are uncomparable, perfectly smooth and easy to use. It's definitely not as versatile as the GlideCam, and if you're not careful, your movements might look robotic, but I love this tool, and it probably won't ever replace my GlideCam, but I'll definitely use it more and more. Tripods for me are only used during ceremonies. I use a Manfrotto 190X Pro, and I just stick them in the back of a ceremony and put a long lens on. I bought a monopod, which I've used a couple times, but honestly, it's not my favorite tool. Personally, my style is more about movement, and the monopod requires your movement to be the subjects you're filming, which can be a beautiful style, and I've seen it done beautifully, but it's just not my cup of tea. Microphones. I own the Rode VideoMic Pro Plus, but I honestly don't use it anymore because of how much I've leaned into lav microphones, but the VideoMic Pro Plus is a great on-camera mic to capture audio. As for lav mics, one of my favorite wedding videographers, Matt Johnson, uses the Tascam DR10Ls, and so I bought them to see if they were worth it, and they definitely are. These things are crisp, small, easy to use, and super durable. I have 2 of these, one in black and one in white for the bride. I love these things, so big thanks to Matt Johnson. I also bring my Zoom H1 as a backup, which I'll sometimes hook up on the officiant or plug into the DJ box. It's a little bit bulky, but super easy to use, and it captures great audio. And again, all my equipment is linked in my kit.com. Lights. Lights are a lifesaver at receptions. A good friend of mine, Adam Grumbo, actually referred these to me, and I love them. These are the Core SW torch lights. I got 2 of them and just put them on tripods at my receptions. They're battery powered, dimmable, and bicolor. Love these things. You can also mount them on top of your camera if you'd like. Moving on to accessories. My bag is full of accessories, starting with my ND filter. These things are lifesavers for bright sunny days. It bumps your exposure down 3 stops so you can keep your aperture wide open. I use Breakthrough Photography's 3 stops. As for batteries, I'm personally a little excessive, so I bring like 5 extra batteries and a charger. I also have 2 cameras, so maybe it's not excessive, I don't know, but I bring 5. SD cards, CFast cards, CFast 2.0 cards. I use a CFast 2.0 Pro Grade 512GB, and I have 2 of these, which get me through a whole wedding day on the 1DX. The 1DX shoots stupidly huge file sizes, so that's the only reason I carry around a terabyte of storage with me, and I've never had issues with them. They work super well. And I pack all of this into my Pelican Air case, which I just recently bought. I love this case because you can set up the dividers the way you want. It's super durable and it fits in overhead compartments on planes. When I don't want to haul my case around, I have a BagSmart camera backpack, which is about $100 on Amazon. Love this bag. Well, that is it for what I bring with me to my weddings. This is accumulation of over 2 years of investments, and I hope in 2 years my gear will be twice as good and upgraded even more. You should always be improving, always growing, always investing in your business. So that's it for what I use. Now go out there and see what gear you love to use. And if you have any further questions, please let me know.